Hi, today we will be talking about the science, technology, and medicine in the 16th and 17th century. I'm Rene.
And I'm Mikaela.
Let's get started. Today, we will be mainly talking about history, beliefs and theories, science, technology, and medicine. Let's start with a tiny bit of history, just to contextualize stuff.
We'll start off in the Dark Ages. Back then, people were very uneducated, finding it superstitious. Only monks and priests could read and write, and were the only hope for scientific, technological, and medical advancement. Around the 1600s, the University of Oxford and Paris were formed, making people much more educated. When the Renaissance started, people still used Old Greek, Roman, and Egyptian findings. During the Renaissance, beliefs started to slightly be discredited, making path for more modern technology, medicine, and science. Now let's talk about beliefs and theories.
These are the four humors. The four humors were a combination of nature and science, and were a way to explain why illnesses were formed. There were four: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. They all had a different element associated with them, as well as a different season, a different body part, and they all emitted a certain emotion. In the eyes of the people in the Renaissance, everything needed to be in balance. If there was too much of one, you could get ill. Now, the usual treatments for this were bloodletting, which we will talk about more later in the presentation, and a mix of diet and herbs to restore the balance. Now, let's get to the good stuff. Let's start with science.
In the 16th century, François Viet discovers the Viet's formula of pi, and in 1557, Robert Record introduces the equal sign. In the 1600s, William Gilbert discovers that the Earth has a magnetic field. In 1665, Robert Hooke discovers the cell, and in 1672, Sir Isaac Newton discovers that light is a spectrum of colors. And in 1687, Sir Isaac Newton discovers the three laws of motion. Now let's talk about technology.
In 1569, Gerardus Mercator created the Mercator projection, which is still used in map and navigation today. It's the really flat map of the round Earth that we see today. In 1597, Hans Stopfler invents the first revolver. In 1600, Galileo Galilei creates the first basic thermometer. In 1609, Galileo Galilei built a practical telescope and discovered many things. Among them were the moons around the planets. Now, the church, the Catholic Church, made him apologize for his findings because it wasn't true. It wasn't until 1992 that they finally admitted he was right, 500 years after his death. In 1620, Antony van Leeuwenhoek and Robert Hooke developed microscopes. And in 1656, Christian Huygens and Galileo Galilei developed the first pendulum clock.
Let's start off with some of the famous inventors and scientists of this time. Let's start off with Sir Isaac Newton. He lived from 1643 to 1727. He was an English physician, astronomer, and theologian and author. He is recognized for some of his greatest achievements, such as calculus and formulating the space gravitational theory. Now let's go with Galileo Galilei. He lived from 1564 to 1642. He is an Italian mathematician, astronomer, and physician. He is widely known for inventing many recognized inventions, including the advancement of the telescope, the proportional compass, and the thermometer. He also discovered many planets and moons with the help of his telescope that he built. We also know Leonardo da Vinci. He lived from 1452 to 1519. He was an Italian polymath who is widely recognized as one of the most diversely talented people for this time. He painted a little-known painting named the Mona Lisa, and he also designed and invented the parachute, an armored car, and the diving suit. Now the final topic, medicine.
In the early 16th century, Paracelsus declared illnesses are not magically caused. He then burned 3 books written by 3 Greek men that discredited his claims. From 1510 to 1590, Ambroise Paré, a French surgeon, started using ligature in gunshot wound treatment. Ligature was basically the first stitches, so he used that instead of cauterizing the wound. In 1543, Andreas Vesalius writes the Humani Corporis Fabrica Libri Septum, or 7 books on the fabric of the human body. This was the first book to be completely accurate about all its findings. In 1546, Girolamo Fracastro proposes diseases are caused by seed-like entities. This was a far big step for the causes of illnesses. And in 1553, Miguel Serveto suggests his blood passes through the lungs. He was burned at the stake for his troubles. And then in 1559, Rialdo Colombo says the exact same thing 9 years later. He is praised for his findings, though. Rest in peace. We will always remember Miguel Serveto.
Always.
And in 1628, yes, always. And in 1628, William Harvey discovers blood circulation.
In the Renaissance, most diseases were deadly. They did not know how to treat them or what caused them. Things as simple as the flu and smallpox killed a very big percentage of the population in Europe.
The Black Plague, or bubonic plague, or Black Death, was a disease carried by rats. It was a big, big problem in that time period, and it killed about 25 million people in total, or 30 to 60% of the population in Europe. It also came back every 10 or so years. The Black Plague created the aspect of quarantine, so thank it for having to stay in your home for 6 months without seeing sunlight. Doctors wore the outfit we see at the left of the screen. It was designed to be really, really creepy to ward off the evil spirits that caused the plague. In fact, they didn't know for certain what caused the plague, so they just covered every single ground they could think of. They had these little eyeglass pieces that would cover them, that would protect them from the evil eyes. The robes were also waxed, the best protection they had from bodily fluids at the time. Now, let's talk about the treatments they used at the time.
They used herbs to treat the victims. They also used wine to wash out wounds. And surgeons used ointments and cauterized the wounds to stop them from bleeding. They used things such as mandrake roots, opium, gall of bar, and hemlock to help the patient deal with pain. So pretty much a painkiller.
People with neurological diseases, such as epilepsy, had holes drilled in their skulls to let the demons out. During the plague, they did turn to rites and magic to stop the plague from happening. At one time, King Charles II was tasked to touch people in order to cure them from a bad case of scrofula.
They thought that illnesses came from an abundance of blood, like we saw in the Four Humors. People used little knives and sometimes used leeches to draw out the blood. This was to take out the excess blood from the human body, to bring the humors back to balance. The churches prohibited priests who often stood as doctors to do the practice. In response, barbers took their place. The red strip on the barber poles is to represent the bloodstained towels that they put in front of their windows. Thank you for listening.
Here is our bibliography with all our sources. Thank you for listening.